Hi, everybody. Good morning. Today, we're going to be reading the second part in Francisco Jimenez's story, Inside Out, about his childhood experiences as an immigrant from Mexico in California. We'll be completing our usual opening do now warm-up routine. We'll be completing a before reading activity where we compare Francisco's experiences at home and at school. He has very different experiences in both of those places. Teachers can revisit this week's academic vocabulary words, anxious and understand, and also students can return to their word knowledge building matrix chart. The purpose for today's lesson. Today we are going to continue the short story Inside Out. As we read the next section, pay attention to how the other characters affect Francisco's emotions and development. Here's a link to the second page of the text, as well as an audio recording. And once again, there's a number of discussion questions for students to look at it during the reading of the text. There's an after reading activity. It's the same activity as the previous lesson, in which students will be responding to various quotes from the text. Once again, students should make sure to have a solid, complete response for the highlighted quotation, as they'll be returning to that specific quotation during this week's Day 4 lesson. Finally, there's a number of closing and connecting activities for students to work on. They could use the word anxious in the context of the story and explain why and when Francisco feels anxious. Students could make personal connections to the text. Francisco is in a new school where he barely speaks English, and many of our ENL students may be able to share connections to that aspect of the story. Students could also return to their before reading activity where they complete the Learns With prompt. As we see here, students will be learning more about Francisco's experiences in school during today's section of the story. Finally, students can make connections to the previous stories from this unit. Let's jump right into today's lesson. Can somebody please read today's essential question? Good. How can the people around us affect our growth? Good. In today's lesson, we're going to be reading about people who Francisco interacts with and how they affect his growth and development as he gets older. Can somebody please read today's 2 lesson objectives? Good. To analyze the development of the central idea or theme in a text. Good. As we read further, we'll be getting more insight into the theme of this story. Next, to explore how words or phrases are used in a text to shape the meaning or tone. Good. We'll be looking at tone and the tone of this story today, as well as various vocabulary words from the story. Let's take a look at our opening do now warm-up routine. Let's look at this image. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? Good. Students may say, in the image, I see an emoji. Many students will be familiar with this emoji. Students may say, I think that. It means sad or crying. Students may also say, one thing I wonder is, who invented emojis? It may also be interesting to ask students what's the purpose of emojis. And what's interesting about emojis is that emojis can be understood in any language. Many students could recognize the emotions in this image, even if they use different words to describe that emotion. Before reading, students could complete a review of yesterday's reading, noting the differences in Francisco's emotions and experiences between his experiences at home and his experiences at school. There's a very distinct contrast between what he experiences in both those places. And it's important for students to maybe try to recognize that. And they could complete these sentences using these sentence starters. Once again, this activity could be found in this week's student handout document before reading. And students could complete these sentences. It's helpful to continue to provide sentence starters as well as examples, but as we move further, we want students to begin to start taking on more of the more of the responsibility on their own without as much teacher prompting and scaffolding. For example, at home he, and students may say, at home he is close with his brother Roberto. That is a big part of his experiences living at home, and his brother is one of the few people who can understand what he's going through as he's trying to learn English in school. Now, there's a link to an audio recording of the text, should students prefer that, or there's also a link to the text here. This will take students to the second page of the story. While students are reading on the story, or maybe as an after-reading activity, students can work on their vocabulary words from the text. This could be assigned as homework or as an additional activity, or a few words can be completed each day based on the words that come up in that section of the story. So this is an excellent way for students to build up their vocabulary while reading. These words that were selected were the highlighted vocabulary words from the text. This document could be found in the Video Adapted Resources folder. Finally, there's the after reading activity where students could respond to different quotations from the text. Once again, students should complete the particular quotation that's been highlighted in yellow, as we'll be returning to that in the Day 4 lesson. Once again, this could be found in the after reading activity on the student handout document, and this is an excellent way for students to keep their work organized for the week so they could easily return to it on the Day 4 lesson. Once again, a sentence start has been provided, but as we move forward in the unit, students should be starting to begin to write without the scaffolding of sentence starters. Finally, there's a few closing and connecting activities depending on what the teacher believes there's time for and what will best meet the needs of their students. Students can reflect on the idea of being anxious and at what times Francisco feels anxious or he feels anxiety. Students can make connections to the text once again about Francisco's experiences with learning English. And once again, students could also make connections to a character from one of the prior week's stories. So at this time, students can jump into the before reading activity and enjoy today's lesson. Thank you again. Have a good day.